A new class. I hope you are all excited. Today we will start a new class from geography, that is chapter 1. In this chapter, we need to understand three basic concepts. The first one is the meaning of resources. What is resources? The second one is the types of resources. The third one is how can we conserve the resources. So in today's class, we will be dealing with what is resources and the types of resources, and we will be dealing the details about natural resources. Now, let us start. What is the meaning of resources? Anything that can be used to satisfy a need is called a resources. I repeat, anything that can be used to satisfy a need is called a resources. For example, water we drink when we're thirsty, the electricity we use at home, the textbook we use to study are few examples. Here, water, electricity, textbook have some common utility. All these resources are used by all of us and thus make these resources becomes very valuable because we use them. Now, let us see how an object or element or a substance becomes a resources. Here there are two important factors we must all remember: time and technology. Time and technology are two important factors which turn an element or a substance into a resources. You could see three different kinds of pictures. These are the types of resources. The first type of resources we can consider is what is a natural resources. Now, the second picture indicates about the human-made resources, and the third one talks about the human resources. In the picture, it says that natural resources, and human resources, they are all interrelated with each other. So now it is very important for us to identify what are natural resources, what are human-made resources, and what are human resources. We shall discuss the detail about natural resources. Now, first, let us understand what are natural resources. Those resources that are drawn from the nature and used without much modification are called natural resources. I repeat, those resources that are drawn from nature and used without much modification are called natural resources. For example, the air we breathe, the water in our rivers and lakes, soil, minerals are all natural resources. Many of these resources are free to nature and can be used directly. In some cases, tools and technology may be needed to use our natural resources in the best possible way. Now, natural resources are classified into different groups. Let us see in detail. Natural resources are further classified into different groups depending upon their level of development and use, origin, stock, and distribution. Let us see in detail in the following slides. Of the level of development, there are two different classification. The first one is the potential resources and the other one is the actual resources. Now on the slides you could see that there are different these two differences which has been displayed on the screen. The potential resources are those resources whose quantity is unknown. We don't know the quantity, and these are not being present used at present. Why? Because we don't have much technology to develop and use them. For example, uranium in Ladakh and the high speed wind, etc. Now let us see the actual resources. These actual resources are those resources whose quantity is known. We know the quantity of those particular resources, and this has been used in the present. For example, the coal, petroleum, dark soil, etc. Basis of origin. These natural resources has been classified into two again, a biotic and biotic. As we all know, biotic are the non-living component, for example, the soil, rocks. And in the biotic resources, we have the living things, that is plants and animals. Next classification we have on the basis of stock is renewable resources and non-renewable resources. As we all know, renewable resources have unlimited stock and these resources can be replenished and renewed quickly. For example, the wind energy and solar energy. Now, if we look at these non-renewable resources, we could see that these resources have a limited stock, and once it gets exhausted, it takes thousands of years to be replenished or renewed. For example, coal and petroleum. Basis of distribution, we have ubiquitous and localized. Ubiquitous resources are those resources which are present everywhere. For example, the air we breathe, water, etc. Now, localized resources are those resources which are found only in certain places. For example, copper, iron ore, etc. Yeah, the different types of resources, we could see that the distribution of natural resources are not equal on Earth. Now, the main factors that depends upon the distribution of natural factors are terrain, climate, and altitude. And based on this climate, terrain, and altitude, the distribution of natural resources depends. And that is why the distribution of natural resources is unequal over the Earth. Let us quickly summarize what we have learned today. The meaning of resources. Now, the meaning of resources we have already learned is anything that can be used to satisfy a need is called a resources. The best example is water, electricity, mobile phones, etc. Now let us go to the next one, that is the types of resources. There are different types of resources we have already learned. That the first one is natural resources, second one is human made resource, and the third one is human resources. Now let us go to the further next point is classification of natural resources. Today we have learned the details about natural resources and the classification of natural resources based on the level of development and use, origin, stock, and distribution. As we conclude today's chapter, I would like to give you certain assignment to do at home. Let us see what is a resource and what are the different types of resources. And the third question is draw a chart of classification of natural resources. Thank you.